Right, okay, I think I'll get started now. Yes, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us for our October webinar. So I hope everybody's keeping well. Before we get started on our agenda for today, as always, we're just going to go over a quick bit of housekeeping. So today's session is being recorded and will be shared with everyone who has registered next week. So if you'd like to share the recording of this session with a colleague who was unable to attend, or if you'd like to review any content covered in today's session, you can. A copy of the slides and the Q&A will also be sent to all registrants next week. Now, the audio for this session is available through your computer speakers or by dialing in by phone. If you experience poor sound quality at any time through your computer speakers, you may wish to try dialing into the session by phone instead. This can be done by accessing your device settings at the top of your screen within the team session. Just click the three dots for more settings, then select device settings, and a device settings area will open on your right-hand side. Participants will remain muted throughout the session. However, there is a chat area which can be accessed via the top of your screen within Teams. We'll be monitoring this throughout the session, so please submit any questions, comments you may have at any time, and we can go over those throughout the session, and we'll also have an open Q&A at the end. Right, time to introduce our presenters. So there's a lot of us here today, so I'm sure you know our couple of the familiar faces. So there's me and Stephen. So we are both customer support advisors here at CLA. And we're also joined by Imogen, who is our senior product manager looking after the DCS. And we're also very happy to be joined by Matthew and Richard from Cardiff University, who I'm just going to quickly pass over to you both now, just to introduce yourselves to everybody. Or Matthew or Richard, if you'd like to just say a quick hello.
That's a good start. I have my microphone muted. Hi, I'm Matt from Cardiff. I manage the copyright and digitization team in the library service.
Hi, I'm Richard Jackson. I'm from the integration development team in Cardiff University, so part of the IT departments. That's the small part of it that deals with integration between systems and building APIs that also offer data.
Wonderful. Yeah, welcome both. We're very happy to have Matthew and Richard here to be talking a little bit about what they've done at Cardiff University. And on that note, let's go over to our agenda. So first of all, we have a very quick DCS team update to share with you all. After this, Matthew and Richard will be walking through and demoing a recent project they've completed using the DCS APIs. After this, Imogen will take you through some product updates with the DCS, and then, as always, we'll end with an open Q&A. Right, okay, so to start off with, we have a very quick update to the DCS team. So I just wanted to let everybody know that this is actually my last DCS webinar, as I will be leaving CLA on the 7th of November. I just wanted to very quickly take this opportunity to say how wonderful it's been to work with everyone. Your passion and knowledge for what you do is inspiring, and it has really been a privilege to work with everyone. Obviously, I don't need to say you're in very safe hands with Imogen and Stephen, and I'm keeping one eye peeled on all the new exciting developments on the DCS. So I just wanted to quickly take the opportunity to say, yeah, goodbye and thanks everyone. It's been a pleasure working with you. But yes, on that note, I'm going to pass you over now to Cardiff University, who are going to be demonstrating some of the uses they've been making of the DCS APIs. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. So if you guys would like to take the reins.
Sure, thanks very much. Right, let me just very quickly share my screen. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
That's great. Excellent. Okay. Right. Thanks very much. So yeah, I'm Matt. I'm managing the digitization team and copyright team at Cardiff Uni. Joined with today by Scott Pryor, who's a subject librarian and copyright expert, Vicky Stallard from our library systems team, and Richard, who's a member of our IT team and has been sort of the technical lead on this DCS Alma API implementation. So what I'm going to talk to you about is how we were doing things before we did the implementation of the API and the problems that we were having with it. And then I'll be passing over for the second half to Richard, who's going to talk about how it was actually implemented, the technical side. So a little bit of background, the systems we've been using and are still using at Cardiff are the Alma library management system, the Leganto reading list system, the Blackboard VLE, and of course the CLA digital content store. Now, the situation we had, as I'm sure you're familiar with, is every year during the summer rollover of the DCS, we need to inform the DCS of our up-to-date student numbers enrolled on the courses at Cardiff. So I'm sure you've seen this before. We would do this by going into the DCS, clicking on reporting, and in the reporting area being able to download a CSV spreadsheet containing all the course codes and associated student numbers currently in the DCS. We then need to update that with the current student numbers, in reality the year just finishing. So for that, I would be going into the student information system at Cardiff, SIMS. I wouldn't need to search for each course individually. There is a workaround where you can put in just the first two initials of a course code, family, asterisk, and it will return all the courses of that type. So in this case, BS with an asterisk will give us all the business school courses. And it would give us this spreadsheet. It's not, you can't actually export it as a spreadsheet, it's just on the screen. In the first column, all the course codes, and in the third column, total number of students. So then would begin a quite laborious process of copying and pasting this data from SIMS into the CSV spreadsheet provided by the DCS. As you can imagine, that's a faff. We'd be manually copying and pasting this information into the DCS spreadsheet. It would cause all kinds of data entry errors, a lot of duplicate courses where the same course code would appear in the old information and the new information, but the student numbers are different, and just human error. We'd be getting duplicate courses with different student numbers. This in turn, then when we uploaded it to the DCS, it would cause repeated failures to upload, and we'd get failure reports, and I'd have to go in and fix all those errors and re-upload it. It was just a faff every year. We also had some kind of known problems that were causing problems that we wouldn't necessarily see the outcome of. So, for example, we were aware that a lot of our schools will recycle old course codes. So they'll retire a course from teaching, but they'll reuse the course code for a new course that they're teaching. That's not flagged anywhere, that's not communicated to us, it's not recorded on SIMS, it doesn't say that the course code has been reused. And that would mean that there was an inaccuracy there between the information on SIMS, which is correct, and the information in the DCS would have the course would have the wrong course name. In terms of reporting, it's fine because the code and the number of students is correct, but the name of the course is incorrect. So it just caused confusion for us later on. We were also finding that there were literally thousands of unused courses, no longer used courses, building up in the DCS. And of course, all the associated citations with those courses were also building up. Again, not a massive problem, but it's untidy, it's kind of inaccurate, and it just meant that we had a very bloated part of the DCS from our point of view. An unforeseen problem occurred when we implemented the Leganto to the DCS API. So it's a different API, Leganto DCS API, obviously to facilitate the use of the Leganto reading list software. So we were finding that Leganto, when an academic or a subject librarian would place a request in the DCS, a digitization request, the API would then be interrogating the DCS to see if the course in Leganto already appeared in the DCS, and obviously if it did, it would link those two together, it would match up. If it doesn't find the course in the DCS, it would then create automatically a new course in the DCS. Problem was we were having a lot of trouble where it wasn't correctly identifying that the DCS already knew about a course. So for example, Leganto would look for course 2223 BS 1234 with this course, this annual prefix. It would not realize that the DCS already knows about course BS 1234, because technically this new course has a prefix in front of it, and then you'd have these two courses, and these were building up. Fortunately, we did notice it after the first year or so, and we realized that this was happening and it was causing an ongoing problem. So Vicky alerted us to this, and then it was a situation for my team to fix this problem. So prior to implementing the new DCS API, so we had to consolidate all these citations across these two courses into one single course, obviously called, the universal name BS1234. Delete the unwanted duplicate course, usually the one, well, always the one with the annual prefix in front of it, and then manually go into Alma and Leganto and check that those citations are still working within Alma and Leganto. So that was quite a laborious task, but once done, it's done, and we don't need to worry about it anymore because we've implemented the DCS to Alma API, which should shortcut around this problem ever occurring again. So I'm going to pass over in a second to Richard to show you how he's implemented this, and basically implementing the API has fixed all of the problems I've just mentioned, and those are just gone. An added benefit is, of course, the API is now syncing data with the DCS more than once per year. We can sync it pretty much as often as we want to. And it generally allows then for a smoother integration between Leganto and Alma and the DCS, and it's just fixed a lot of things, and we can be pretty sure that the information amongst those three systems is accurate and correct. So now, Richard, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to pass over to you. And Richard is going to give you the technical side of how we implemented it, if I can work out how to stop sharing. There we go. Richard, it's over to you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks everyone for having us here today. So yeah, I'm going to talk through the technical side of actually what I did to build the integration between the two. So let's see if I is that shared? Can you now? Yep. Okay. Oh yeah, of course it came up on the other screen. Brain gone. Right. So it's a bit slow. Right. Okay. So what I did is I wanted to be able to build just an overall picture of how I would expect the process to look. And there are, in simple terms, there were two sides to the process. There was the Alma side, and there's the DCS side. In the team that I work with, we use predominantly two major technologies to build our integrations or APIs and services. One is something called WSO2 Enterprise Service Bus, which is an open source technology, and we predominantly use that to build APIs and services. And something is also, and the other is Pentaho ETL, which is an extract, transform, load tool, which I also mentioned just slightly later on in the presentation. So on the Alma side, I had already developed an API using WSO2 to pull data from Alma and push data into Alma. And that was from a previous project that I worked on, which, funny enough, was actually about taking courses from Blackboard into Alma. And one of the main aspects for that was to do with student numbers. So that was great. The Alma side sorted. DCS, obviously, using the API. And what I did before I started actually developing the integration, I used something called Postman. I don't know if folk have heard of that. that you can use to test endpoints. So just to get a feel of what I was going to need to do to actually utilize the DCS API. This highlighted a few limitations on how the API operated, and I'll mention those in the next slide. But it meant that I knew what I was working with when I designed the process, and so I was able to design the process flow to actually overcome those limitations. They weren't deal breakers there. So just briefly, but I'll talk about them a little bit more when I show you Postman. In terms of the endpoint for get courses, all you pass is your institution ID. As far as I can tell, you can't pass a way to filter courses, so you get all the courses back for the current academic year, whether they're active or whether they're deleted courses. And it also doesn't return the number of students on a course in that course information. I'll touch on that a little bit. And then with post and put, I would normally expect to be able to pass the information in as a JSON body, but this passes in as part of the URL. But as I say, all of these were able to be overcome. So if I can swap out to Postman, right, hopefully you can still all see that. So as I say, so I'm pointing at the sandbox here today to make sure I don't break anything for us in our live environment. And I'm calling get courses, and I'm passing in our institute ID along with the other information that's required, the authorization and the API key. So if I call that, here we are. We've currently got 7,970 courses, but if I look, you can see the first course is status deleted. And if I then go into Chrome, these are the courses that in our sandbox. Let me make sure that's refreshed. Yeah, live. Okay. So in terms of the posting a course, so post, so that's when you're creating a course. Apologies for assuming. So you can see submit course. It takes the institute ID, course code, course name, and the number of students. And that's what we're mainly interested in passing over, is to be able to create a basic course record that can then be utilized for the within DCS. So if I send that now, so yeah, there we go. Course code AA1001, status OK, status message success. And if I go back into sandbox, here we are, AA01 DCS test course 1. And in its simplicity, it's what the integration does. It pulls the data from Alma, pulls data from DCS, and creates the courses. So in designing, it seems to have gone a little bit big. The process, on the one side, I'm reading the data from Alma, and I do some checks to make sure there were no errors and I've got results. And on the other side, I also do the same for DCS. So I read all the courses. As I said, you get all of the courses for the current academic year. So I then have a check to say, is the course that I'm looking at an active course? And if it is, then yeah, it passes through. And then between having merged the two lists of information, I can work out whether or not a course is already in DCS. If it is, I can amend it. If it's not, it's a new course, so I can create it, and so it determines whether or not I use the post or the put course. So, mentioned this, I developed this tool using the Pentaho data integration, which is an ETL tool, which stands for extract, transform, and load. And the reason I did that is because this Pentaho is good for scheduled processes where we're dealing with, you know, maybe thousands of rows of data. WSO2 we tend to use for more reactive purposes. And as Matt has already mentioned, we've now gone from uploading our information once per year to we actually run this every day. So each day, new or updated courses, I look in Alma to see what's been added into Alma in the previous day, and I either add or update those in DCS. And oh yeah, that's right. So what we did, because we wanted during the testing process while I was developing the integration, because we wanted to be able to have a good flow of data, we actually pointed to live Alma, because that was providing us with regular updates, current fresh data, whereas you know, the test Alma system doesn't tend to get updated so much, so it wouldn't have provided as much live flowing data. But what we did is we put it into the DCS sandbox, obviously, because we don't want to be touching the live DCS and possibly messing things up. So I've said that I was going to give you a demonstration of the transformation process. What I did is, because it's a schedule, I actually set the schedule to run at 11 o'clock this morning. And on the slide, it mentions about Grafana dashboard. And what I will do, and I forgot to open that, apologies, is right. So if here we are. So 22 minutes ago, the process ran, and it ran. The sandbox hasn't been rolled over, so it's still looking at 22-23, but that's fine. So I was looking at all courses, but modified in the last 30 days, just to try and limit the numbers we're looking at. And what you can see here is that it said, right, okay, I found 62 courses in Alma that met that criteria. 7,710 courses in DCS, and there were no new courses either submitted or failed, but 62 courses were amended, and you can see that information here. Probably you won't see the date having changed in the DCS more, because the information that was in ALMA and in DCS would have matched. So it doesn't then update the modified date, but yeah, that's it. Where's my right brain? Oh, come on. There we are. Any questions? I'll get there. And we've also got Vicky and Scott who are happy to chip in as well. So yeah, let me open the floor to questions.
Just while people are putting any questions they might have in the chat for you, because I don't think other people can turn voice on. So if you do have a question for the team, please pop it in the chat. While they do, just to say thank you very much for that. I mean, I've heard quite a lot about this API from you, but it was great to have a kind of detailed walkthrough. That was really good. So this year coming up will be the first time that it's sort of, sorry, I'm losing track a little bit. This will be the first time that we're using it for rollover, will it? Yeah. So yeah, well, hopefully it'll mean a much lighter load than in previous years. We've had a question in from Catherine. Oh, questions are coming thick and fast now, so I'm going to mute and pass back to you.
Just to Catherine's question about Blackboard or Blackboard Ultra. No, we moved across to Blackboard Ultra. As part of that, we had a slightly earlier rollover over the summer than usual. So that, alongside the rollover for CLA, was an exciting few weeks. Let's put it that way. But it's working well with Blackboard Ultra, and it works well with organisation codes in Blackboard Ultra as well, if you're using those. And then a question from Tina, how long did this take to set up? I think we were quite cautious with our testing, weren't we? Richard, from beginning to end, Vic, how long would you say it took us to get it to a...
I think probably from beginning to end, it was a good 6 months, because we started it really, really early. And then everything went to pot because we ended up having the early rollover. So we started talking about it probably November, December time, with a view to the rollovers happening in kind of June time. But then we ended up having to roll over in April because of the Blackboard Ultra stuff. But we had tested sufficiently, and we were, it was all rolling along very well to that point, but we just didn't have the live data running, because we were wanting to make sure that the APIs were kind of doing the right thing but not having unintended consequences. And with the different rollovers, we thought we won't take a chance this academic year. So which is why, as Imogen has rightly said, this coming end of academic year will be the first time that we actually use this properly. But yeah, I would say probably 6 months all told, and then switching our APIs back on to start gathering the information for the new academic year kind of happened finally about 4 weeks ago. So everything is now running smoothly, and we're not touching it, and fingers crossed we don't have to do anything until CLA rollover in June 2024.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. Yeah, so you mentioned that you'd rolled over very early this year. I just want to let people know that is, we can make exceptions, but really it's very much exception, and we do try to keep people within the rollover window, just in case we give the wrong impression there. It is possible if there's extenuating circumstances, but we try to make it exceptions. And then as you were saying, it's quite a lead up, which is one of the reasons this is a great time to have you talk, actually. So if people do want to look at doing something similar, then there is time to do it now before the new rollover, but you probably want to start thinking about it fairly soon. I don't see any more questions coming through in the chat, so just one final one. If people do want to get started, would you be happy to talk people through it in a bit more detail on a kind of HEI basis?
I think we could definitely come to an arrangement regarding biscuits and the trade thereof. But yeah, I we'd be more than happy to help. It's obviously it'll dependent on like local setups and everything. Sure. And it took us 6 months because we were cautiously testing everything. But I think people could probably get something up and running a little bit quicker than that. But yeah, we'd be more than happy to help.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much again. I mean, we know from speaking, from your experience, as well, how much that getting the student numbers in is the kind of biggest sticking point for rollover now. So it's really a great improvement that you've made for your HEI and potentially someone else. I've had another question Kevin in the chat. Yep. Kevin's asking, where did the drive for this development come from? It's only an annual task. For us, it's reasonably straightforward. So there we go.
I think the drive came from, obviously, there was the kind of annual upload over the summer, but there was always the question of new courses coming in, and our integration between Leganto and the DCS was starting to introduce some errors, which we were spotting, but it was adding to the workflow a little bit. So we were trying to work out ways that we could kind of automate as much as possible and be as hands-off. And the upload itself sometimes was kicking back errors, and so what should be just a upload a file and done was a day's work sometimes, as Matt will speak to. But we just saw an opportunity to automate as much as possible and handle any problems that could be coming in with late addition of courses and things like that.
It's interesting. So I've been speaking to quite a few HEIs since I've joined in March, and there's quite a spread, I think, of stress bucket, if you like, over putting the student numbers in. And for some people, yeah, it doesn't seem to be a big issue, Kevin, and perhaps it's related to where the numbers come from, the access that the digitization team has to the registry team, the sort of straightforwardness, if you like, of the numbers that come that you then have, and then other teams, it really does seem to be a real nightmare, partly getting accurate numbers and then sort of trying to update them. And I think the size of the institution is quite variable, has a big impact as well. Yeah. Okay, are there any, sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add a couple of points. Yeah, because it was the initial drive for the development was me as the person who was doing the uploading, the data gathering and the uploading work. And there was actually a fair bit of one of our schools is the adult education department. They don't use the SIMS student information system. They have their course details elsewhere. So there's a fair bit of faff and phoning around and admin associated with it every year. But I will say that, and that is actually, I had this on my agenda for the systems team, the IT people, to help us with for a few years, but it kept getting pushed back in terms of priority because it was just one person who's being affected by it. But once Richard and Vicky started to work on the implementation, yeah, like Scott said, it did throw up all these other improvements that it would actually provide, especially in terms of the Leganto API implementation. It started to show up. Hang on a minute. There are unforeseen or there are implications that we hadn't realized that this API would actually solve and fix. So in terms of the initial drive, it was just sort of one person's problem, and I was hoping the IT team and the system team would help me out with it. But as it turns out, it had all these unforeseen benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, and to add to that, it was almost just a case of good timing because I only actually joined the library systems team a year and a bit ago. So it was almost And I came from the library side into the library systems team, and I was responsible for a lot of the reading list stuff already. So it was kind of the perfect fit that I was moving into the systems team. Leganto was my bag. Matt had been making this query, for the last few years. I needed to get my teeth into some sort of project. So it all kind of just slotted together, really. So it was good happenstance as well as a genuine need. And as Matt said, fixed an awful lot more issues than we had really even realised it might do. So all good.
Yeah.
So, Cameron, I don't know if you're going to pick up or I am at this point.
Oh no, I was going to just pass over to you, to be honest. I think we're on to some DCS product updates, I believe.
Super, yes. Let me share my window, which I think is this. Please do let me know if I'm sharing my screen now, hopefully.
Yep.
Fabulous. Right. So I have just a couple of things. I mean, really, it's sort of almost recapping on what we talked about last time. I'm going to start with Born Digital content load. I mentioned last month that we had a big update coming. So last week we went live with our biggest data load to date. So previously we had about 150,000 Born Digital titles on the system. We've just added over 120,000 new ones. So we've almost doubled it, and we've now got a total of about 270,000 in the system, which is great. As well as those 120 new titles, there were updates to about 9,000 more as well. The new titles that weren't available before as Born Digital are from these publishers. So you can see the vast majority were a huge batch that we had from Taylor and Francis, a lot from Springer, University of California Press, Wiley, and then a few also from Polity and a couple of others. So I know these numbers are slightly different to the ones I showed last month before the load. Just to say, it's inevitable that some won't make it through the load process. There's a few reasons for this. Sometimes there's glitches in the PDFs or issues with the metadata that the publishers supply. We're still kind of going through fairly forensically to find out why some of the ones that failed did, and it may be that we can add some more as we kind of sift through these. But in the meantime, hopefully this new load of about 120,000 titles means that you'll find more Born Digital hits when you're searching in the DCS. The other thing to mention is data hygiene. And it was actually interesting in Cardiff's presentation that they talked about having about 7,000, or finding that there were a huge number. There was a massive glut of data for courses that had ended up replicating. So part of that touches this as well. So yeah, we talked last month about how this beautiful, simple platform that was built initially has over time had features and integrations and more users and is starting to affect performance. So this is just a reminder that on Wednesday next week, so the 6th of November, we'll be deleting all course data from 2019-20 academic year and earlier. So don't worry, this is not the scans themselves. The repository remains intact, so they'll be available to link to again in the future should you wish to. And this is only data that's older than 3 full academic years. We won't touch anything from 2020-21 or newer than that. Last time we talked through some of the concerns that you had expressed. I think it's helpful to just recap those now. And there's a bit of an update on one of them as well. So you were worried that the scans were going to be deleted. No, that's not going to happen. We will address scans later, particularly where we've got duplicates of the same thing, and we'll look at how we can clean that out. But that's not this project, that'll be later. Links won't break. If students need access to their links for the full course, which might be more than 3 years, this is something that a good few people mentioned. The fact is, for the links to be live, the course has to be active, so relevant for this year. So this shouldn't affect anything at all, because if a course is not active, then the links don't work anyway. People were talking about resurrecting courses after 2 to 3 years, so that's why we've put the cutoff point at 2019-20 academic year. And then finally, people did mention that you maybe get asked for data going back further. And this is where we've got a slight change from last time. So while we would still recommend downloading previous HEI reports, actually, it turns out that this data that runs the reports is stored in a slightly different repository. So actually, we should still be able to run reports after the data cleanup. You won't necessarily be able to reactivate or go into the requests themselves, but the data, the basic data around metadata around them should still remain. So HEI reports should be available. So we'll be starting this deletion on the 6th of November, next Wednesday, as I say. You don't need to do anything. We'll manage this behind the scenes. And although the reporting facility should remain, if you'd like to, then please feel free to download any HEI reports, anything like that from 2019 and 20, just for safety's sake. That's all I have to say at the moment. We are working on one other element of sort of performance enhancement at the moment, which is related to exactly how the APIs call the DCS. It won't affect any APIs that you might have. It won't affect any integrations that you might have. It's all sort of behind the scenes, but it should, again, just help the performance a little bit, take the load off the main system. Hopefully I'll be able to talk a bit more about what we've done and how it works next time. And then there's a couple of other sort of minor improvements that we should be bringing to you for next time as well. But for now, I think we're on to Q&A. So I cannot currently see the chat to see if there's anything in. Yeah. So these are the main agenda points we had today. If anybody has any other questions, please let us know. While we wait and see if anything appears in the chat, I am just going to flick on to the next slide quickly, which is site. So don't forget that, sorry, Cameron, did you want to talk about this?
Oh, no, you go ahead. But after our last webinar, so some very clever person in the chat recommended that we add a QR code. So if you just flick to the next slide, there should be one there. So if anyone hasn't already registered to site, this will be taking place on Thursday next week. So please do register. I'm sure you'll find it incredibly interesting. And there's a big old QR code there if you'd like to scan it. So thank you to the person last time who suggested that.
Brilliant.
So we have had a question come through. So going forward with the data, will we be deleting data on an annual basis and keep 4 years?
I think that does make sense, yes. I think we'll see the sort of difference this makes, but I think it does make sense. I think speaking to many of you in the engagement sessions we've had, actually keeping a sort of clean system is useful for you as well. So I think that is a sensible thing to do, but I don't want to give a definitive yes until we've kind of done this first one, see the impact, you know, hear your feedback, make sure that it hasn't caused anything that we wouldn't expect it to. So hopefully yes, but TBC.
Great, thank you.
Cool. I don't see any other questions. So while we just give it another second, I just want to say thank you so much to Cameron. I can't believe this is your last webinar, but there we are. What can we do? Just thank you so much for hosting these and supporting long before I joined, and certainly since I have. So thank you. And thank you also to all at Cardiff for coming and talking about your API today. It's been really, really interesting and hopefully has sparked some ideas for your fellow HEIs.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you. I don't see any other questions. So I think perhaps we'll call time and just say thank you very much to everyone for attending. And most of us will see you next month.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks very much. Bye then. Bye.